Hello my peeps, this is Kat aka Kakibot, and on this channel I make videos all about life and traveling around Scotland and Edinburgh. And today I really hope you love budgeting, because that's what this video is all about. It is about the cost of living here in Edinburgh. Now, if you don't plan to move here, if you're only planning to visit Edinburgh, I think that you should still keep watching, because this might be helpful for you in terms of the prices of eating out, coffee, groceries. There will be plenty of useful information for everyone. Now, it really is a testament to the dedication I have given this channel that at this point I have already made this video twice. One time 3 years ago and one time 6 years ago. So it is now that sweet spot again to find out just how much worse things have gotten. Oh, this is gonna be a painful edit for me as I realize just how wallet drying and bank account draining life in Edinburgh has gotten. But you know, we spend that money because we love it here. Oh well. Also, it gives me a great insight into just how badly I'm aging, so that's a bonus. Anywho, I think what we're gonna start with is the cost of actually renting a house. Let's talk about that. Okay, so I brought out my trusty lappy because there's a lot of numbers going on there, and I have a very bad memory for numbers. Anyway, let's start by talking about rent. In the last two videos, 3 and 6 years ago, I kind of averaged out the pricing for Edinburgh as a whole, which I feel is a bit misleading, because like the pricing is so different in the city center and then in like the wider center and then in the suburbs. So this time I kind of split it into 3 tiers. I'm gonna start by talking about the pricing in the city center, which includes places like Newtown and Stockbridge, because those are very kind of like high-end addresses that everyone wants to live at. So in this area, a 1 bed is gonna be about £1,200 per month on average, a 2 bed 1,500, and a 3 bed about 2,000. I think when you go somewhere like Zoopla, you will notice that the pricing for like 3 beds, 4 beds will be wild for those larger properties. That is because in Newtown specifically you get a lot of townhouses, which are like that is then an address with like a whole whiff of luxury, so that kind of skews the average. But in general, if you're looking for regular flats, then about 2,000 will get you a 3 bed in that sort of area. Now, moving on to center adjacent, which I would kind of count our address into, like we're in the sort of Dalry, Gorgie area, but I would also probably add places like Meadowbank and some areas in Leith. In those, 1 bed, £1,000, 2 bed, 1,300, and 3 bed about 1,800. And then we move on to suburbs, which would be areas like Wester Hailes and Pilton. Simon hates Pilton.
Yeah, sorry.
In those, a 1 bed flat will be about 900 on average, 2 bed 1,200, and a 3 bed about 1,500 to 1,700. This is an area where you will find a lot of like newly built houses, so you can actually get like a standalone building of your own, which, you know, for some people might be a nice selling point. Now, the way I sourced these prices was that I kind of did some calculations using like an aggregate website. In my case, Zoopla. I do have friends who are much better at kind of like hunting down like low-cost rent. Usually you do have to kind of look at the agency website specifically, and like every morning you have to make sure that you know when they update their portfolio, and like you snatch it straight away. The housing market right now in Edinburgh is it is a bit Wild Westy. Like, things happen really fast. You really have to act fast. Don't even really think about it. Just, you know, people will just like snatch properties from, you know, under you if you're giving yourself the time to think. So you do have to be very speedy. A side note on buying property, this is actually a process that we are currently going through, so I thought that it would be much better if I make a video about that maybe in a month or two. Once we are done with that process, at that point we will have a nice sort of finalized first-hand experience with it, and that's going to be much more useful for you. So for now, this is just for renters. And also for context, you probably have seen our flat through multiple videos already if you're a fan of this channel. This is a 3-bedroom flat with like a little extra office that I work from, which is not a bedroom, it's kind of like a study, but not really, kind of like a box room with a window. And when we first moved here, when I made that video 3 years ago, it was £1,500, and now it's almost 1,700. The thing is that essentially, since COVID times, when the council did have like a freeze on rent hikes, the situation has been kind of going worse and worse. I think that for a year after COVID, there was a limit of a 3% raise, and now that limit is gone. So technically, if we stayed here for the next year, our rent might go up by another like £100. I am pretty sure that once we move out, like this place will probably be on the renting market for about 2,000. I'm gonna be keeping an eye out for that because I am morbidly curious. Now, one of the big bummers of living in Edinburgh and paying rent here is that that's not even everything. You also have to pay the council tax, as many of you probably remember from the past videos. And the councils have decided that the council tax will actually go up this year by almost 10% across most of Scotland. So, and the numbers can just vary wildly depending on how large the property you're renting is, and also like how new it is and what address it is, how central it is. This flat in Leith is in tax band F. So on top of the 1,700 rent every month, you will also be paying almost £3,500 a year in council tax. On the other hand, this flat is in Cannon Mills. It costs £1,000 per month in rent, and you will also be paying extra £1,700 a year in council tax. And that also includes payments for like water and sewage. Also, in this specific flat, we pay £170 per month for like gas and electricity, which I guess is kind of on the higher side because we do both work from home and we are at home a lot. Our phone bills, that's something where we kind of like differ. I have a no contract thing going on with GiveGaff. Still, I feel like I have been plugging them throughout my whole YouTube history. I still pay only £10 for this sort of service, which feels very fair, very cheap. And again, I don't have a contract. I can leave them at any point, and they can't stop me. While Simon does have a contract, but his contract and his monthly payments also cover our internet at home, which is quite a speedy internet. So for Simon, for £35 a month, he gets his phone allowance, plus we get our speedy internet. So that's also not that bad. Now, I bet that some of you are finding some of these prices a bit eye-watering. Now, imagine trying to survive in Edinburgh as an actual self-employed maker. Thankfully, I've got Skillshare in my corner, and apart from so many classes on how to get actually better at whichever creative skill you're trying to hone, they also have many classes on kind of like how to make it business-wise and how to take care of your finances. Like Make a Living as an Artist by Brooke Glaser, which is one that I gave a go. But whether you are after classes to sharpen your art skills or wants to help you organize your finances, you will find what you need on Skillshare, the largest online learning community for creatives. You'll find classes on topics spanning art, design, entrepreneurship, you name it. To me, creative practice is a bit like working out. It takes some time to get into the swing of creative routine, but it is just so good for your mind and soul. So why not let Skillshare be your creativity gym? And I'm sure that after all the money talk, you are all keen to get a little freebie. The first 500 people to join Skillshare using the link in my description box are gonna get 1 month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. Okay, now let's move on to something that will be relevant to both of you who are visiting and also you who are moving here and are planning to commute for work perhaps, or just explore your new city, and that is transportation costs. Now, luckily for me, to kind of help me prove my point about the cost of living here, the Lothian buses and trams have just recently announced that they are taking the prices of tickets up by 10%. So it's a pretty easy calculations. The prices go from like £2 for a single adult to £2.20. Those are the prices for both trams and buses. I believe that the day ticket is now supposed to be £5.50, but only £5 if you are using the little like tabby system. if you're paying by card essentially, but that only works on the buses, so you can't really make the tram a part of it yet, I am told. It's a bit of a mess. I recommend you watch my video on public transport in Edinburgh. That will give you a more thorough idea on how things work here. Just remember, it will be more expensive now. Prices are also going up for sort of like intercity travel. So for example, we travel to Glasgow quite a lot, which currently costs us just over £16 each there and back. Although I will say, if you are in any of these age brackets, you should definitely apply for a rail card, which will give you 30% off any off-peak travel. We are not in those brackets, but we were able to get the two together rail card, which still gets us the 30% off as long as we travel together. So now Simon is just forced to join me on many unnecessary little trips. Saves me money. Costs him a tenner. But if you wanted to travel the other direction, for example into East Lothian, maybe you want to go to like North Berwick, I believe that the East Lothian, or is it East Coast buses, that is £5 to go between Edinburgh and North Berwick. Of course, we also have a season pass that is called the Rida card here in Edinburgh, and that also is going up by 10%. So, you know, again, the math is really easy. I have some notes here. So for an adult, it is currently £66, but it's going to be £73. That is for 4 weeks of travel. It does include traveling to the airport, which makes it kind of a good deal if you travel to the airport often. However, you can also have a direct debit set up, which then takes the price down a bit to only £68. Now, if you prefer to drive, being, you know, a pirate of the roads, first of all, don't forget that Edinburgh is quite unfriendly towards drivers and the low emission zone, which, you know, I guess that in long term is a good thing. However, the low emission zone, which has been fully introduced, I think last year, has really made it quite hard for anyone to drive an older car. So, you know, if you're buying a car, especially secondhand, do check if it fits into the emission standards, because otherwise you might be locked out of the city centre. But anyway, in most of Edinburgh, you will also probably have to pay for a parking permit. If, you know, again, we live kind of in the slightly extended city centre, and we pay £20 per month for our very average Skoda. However, this price goes up if you have a larger car or if you have multiple cars. The current prices for petrol and diesel are £1.35 per litre of petrol and £1.46 per litre of diesel. You will also have to pay some insurance. For us, it is £50 a month, but that is because Simon is a very responsible and very good driver, so he deserves that, even though I know that in some countries, for example in Czech Republic, you pay even less than that. So this is the bit I bet a lot of you were waiting for in this video, which is going to an actual British supermarket and checking out what the prices are like now, 3 years later since that last video. So I'm gonna pop in, I'm gonna find all the same items that I found last time and compare on screen for you how the prices have changed. I'm really actually quite curious. Now, one thing I'm gonna tell you before I go is that we have this like little bit of a bad habit happening among British supermarkets at the moment, which is that what used to be like loyalty schemes, all your Nectar cards and Tesco Club cards, which felt like an optional thing kind of on top of special offers, are now basically the prerequisite for getting any special pricing. So you will see on the price tags in Sainsbury's that you have like the regular price and the Nectar price. I do recommend, if you are planning on settling down in Edinburgh, you just will have to get all of those loyalty schemes, because otherwise you lock yourself out of all of those good prices, even though they're more like okay prices, and the non-Nectar prices are just horrible prices. But yeah, that is the life we live now when it comes to shopping for groceries. So yeah, I'm gonna get my Nectar card ready and off to Sainsbury's with us. Okay, so my first impression, I would say, is that it's not as bad as I thought. The pricing has stayed more or less the same, especially on the own brand products. But then again, I am shooting this when I haven't edited it yet, so you know more than I do at this point. I did also want to point out that obviously Sainsbury's is not really like a budget place to shop. I think when it comes to the regular supermarkets, it's actually one of the slightly posher ones. Usually the list goes like Aldi and Lidl, then you have like Asda, Tesco, Sainsbury's, and then on the other end of the spectrum you have M&S and Waitrose. And this is actually kind of funny because here in Edinburgh this is a place called the Craigleith Retail Park, and you can go to Sainsbury's, you can go to Lidl here, and you can even go to M&S. Yeah, I would say Lidl and Aldi are really good if you're cooking a lot from scratch, especially if you're not trying to source any weird things, unless obviously it's like the special week in Lidl, you know, and then you will suddenly find something extremely exotic for that 1 week only. When it comes to like meat and classic veggies, you will get the best value for your money there. On the other hand, in M&S, that's kind of the place where you go. It's kind of like going to TK Maxx. Like you're never quite sure what you're going to leave with. There's a lot of weird exotic things. It's a bit like Trader Joe's. Like if you're American, then I would say M&S is like the closest thing we have to Trader Joe's. And now we are going to talk about the utterly terrifying costs of dining out here in Edinburgh. Let's start with coffee. I think if you want to save yourself money, make yourself coffee at home. Buy yourself a nice bag of good beans from like Cairngorm or Steampunk, and treat yourself to like high quality coffee at home. But if you really can't help yourself, which I can't, therefore I cannot judge you, you will be paying about $3.50 for an Americano in the city centre, and like $4 to $4.50 for a frothy coffee now, which, you know, includes all of your flat whites and cappuccinos and lattes. These prices are going to be slightly lower as sort of you get further from the city centre. But if I were you, I would mentally prepare myself for the shock. Now also pastries, especially again in all of those like award-winning, list-topping bakeries, are going to be almost £5, especially if you sit in. I am pretty sure that I have paid over £5 for a pastry in Ante in Edinburgh last summer, so not even in 2025. Actually, just earlier today we went to 12 Triangles and we paid £28 for this. Now, if you want to dine out in the evening, you have a couple of options. You can do something more budgety, which is usually going to be about £15. You know, think your, plate of pasta or your bowl of ramen. Yeah, I would say like £15 per person, if you're not getting any extra accoutrements, is probably a realistic sort of price point. If you want to do street food, you should remember that in this country, the concept of street food is more of a novelty than an actual part of the food culture. So a street food meal is usually going to be really good and usually quite exciting, but often it's also going to be between £8 and £12. That is if I'm not talking about what I think is the actual British street food, which is a van outside of a football stadium that sells a £2 bacon roll, and now that's a savings. Now, if you want to go to like a nice sit-down restaurant and actually spend time there, and if it's like perhaps like a semi-special occasion, I would say you will have to budget £60 to like £120 on average for two people. That's kind of where we are at right now. Usually you will get a meal for like £20, but maybe you will get starters. A starter is usually £10, small plates, that sort of thing. Drinks, a pint, £6-7 these days. A cocktail, £10 to £12. And also these days, sneakily, it is the standard to be paying a service charge, which I'm not against, sort of philosophically, but it is something that has changed. When I first moved here, that was not a thing, and I think that even 3 years ago it was kind of less common. Now you see it in most places, and honestly, even those bakeries where you pay £5 for a pastry will ask you for a tip, but at least there I think it's still quite normal to say no. I think when it comes to the tipping culture, if someone asks you, they usually just like give you the little iPad and you're supposed to pick 5, 10, 15%. Usually like there is no like bad vibe around you not tipping. I think there's an understanding that not everyone can. However, in those like nice restaurants, I think then the assumption is that if you're going to eat out like that, you do probably have those 12.5% extra in your pocket. Another not so fun expense is healthcare. Now, we are obviously very blessed to have the NHS, free public healthcare, but there are some caveats to it. For the ones of you who are maybe UK citizens and are moving to Edinburgh and don't have to kind of worry about the whole immigration shenanigan, then you probably already know that like it is actually quite hard to access care. So very often you will end up paying for healthcare kind of out of your own pocket, specifically things like dentists or, you know, therapy. Therapy costs about 80 to 120 pounds per session. That tends to be not in person, it tends to be online. And dentists. So personally, I go to a dentist that's quite expensive, and I pay about £100 for my like cleaning, and I pay, I think, about £200 when I need a filling, which thankfully isn't too often, but then sometimes I also need a root canal, which is £1,200. Personally, I would say if you don't have great teeth, I wouldn't consider this an optional expense. The NHS dentists are stretched quite thin and they don't really have that much time for you, and dental care is not really that high of a priority. So if you can pay out of pocket for a private dentist, you will get much better care, you will get service that will last longer, and it's also going to be a lot more pain-free and faster when you're already in pain. So unfortunately, I do have to recommend getting a private dentist as the reasonable thing to do, especially if you do have trouble with your teeth and you want to have access to an actual doctor in like a quicker time than like 2 weeks. And of course, if you are moving from abroad, then you have to pay the NHS surcharge, which is over £1,000 per year per person as an adult, and 700-ish for a child. Now, obviously, all of this, once you get the indefinite leave to remain, which is what I have, is not something that you have to pay anymore at that point, but also getting to that point, you know, through all of the visas and stuff, you will also be paying for that, for the whole process of either getting the leave to remain or a citizenship. So yeah, that's like a whole other can of financial worms. But hey, to end on a positive note, at least I'm going to mention that still in Scotland, all of your medication is going to be free. That includes things like the pill and any mental health medicine you might need, which does, you know, add up as savings. So yay. Okay, now we're getting to the end of the video, and I'm gonna tell you about the costs of leisure, you know, fun things to do. I am here at Fountain Park, where you can do multiple of those things. You can go to the gym. In Fountain Park, you will find the Nuffield gym, which is one of the more expensive ones. Generally, in the UK, you do get kind of like 2 tiers of gyms. You have like the budget gyms, where in Edinburgh, the pricing is usually about 20 pounds per month. Usually that gives you access to multiple gyms around town, which is good, and they tend to be open 24/7. So I think that's really affordable and really practical. Then you have places like this, Nuffield, which also have a swimming pool. I don't know if they have like a sauna, do they?
Yep.
Yes, Simon used to go there. They do have things like sauna, but then the pricing goes up to like £80, which is wild to me. Like, I think that is like in no way good value when compared to the budget gyms. But if you'd prefer not to get too sweaty, then you can also go to the cinema here. Now, cinemas also come in like different sort of value ranges. In my experience, I think View Cinema tends to be the cheapest. The ticket there tends to be about £8, and they are very comfortable and they play quite a lot of things at all times. So I think that would be my recommendation if you're trying to save money. Then you have places like this. This is the Cineworld, and they have like a lot of the cool sort of entertainment technology inbuilt. They do have the IMAX screen, and they do have the 4DX screenings. So if you're seeing like a blockbuster, if you're seeing Twisters, then you do have to see it in 4DX, because that's like the best movie for that. That 4DX was built for Twisters. And then you also have the art cinemas. They tend to have like nice bars, just generally like a nice artsy vibe, but tickets kind of range from like £8 if it's like an older movie to 15 if it's a new release. But it is a nice experience. I think that going to an artsy cinema feels a lot more like going to a theater as opposed to going to here, where like you're blasted in your face with water, which doesn't feel too classy, but you know, it's a nice way of unwinding. Now, if you would prefer to see a show live, there tends to be quite a lot of musicals. You know, usually it's like a visiting company and they tend to be on for a couple of days. The tickets for those tend to be between £20 and about like 35. There's like, you know, the sort of big name musicals, those are like £35 and up, depending on like what seat you want and how speedy you are. You can also find enough events and performances that are free. For example, my friend Oscar, he is the real drag royalty of Edinburgh. He has 2 recurring shows. One of them is called Glamour, the other one is called Cook. Both of them are free to attend, but you are expected to, you know, tip your artist. By the end of the show, you will be totally in love with Oscar and you will want to give him all your money. So like, I wouldn't worry about that. And of course, and this is not going to be any news for you, I'm sure there's so many things that you can do for free, including, you know, museums and galleries. And there's of course a couple of things that you might want to do or see in terms of kind of like historical environment that are paid for. And in that case, I will say that most sort of like lesser known, less popular castles are about £7 to visit, and the sort of like big hitters, the real bangers, the Stirling Castle, the Edinburgh Castle, those tend to be about £20. I have to say that Edinburgh Castle, when I first moved here 12 years ago, was about £16 to get into. So it only went up by £4, which is not that bad, I think. I think that back then it actually felt a lot more expensive. Then again, I was a very poor student and I just couldn't afford it, so maybe it's also that. Okay, now I hope that this video has not completely dissuaded you, completely terrified you in terms of what you will need, what sort of budget is necessary to live in what is presumably the city of your dreams. As it should be, it's beautiful here, but it is expensive. Anywho, some things have gone worse, some things have gone better, or at least the same. And I think kind of like looking at how things used to be and how they are now, I mean, you know, reflecting on that, I definitely have to say that it has impacted our sort of quality of life. Definitely, you know, not in the same situation where I could afford flying to Japan every year and fun things like that, or like getting a haircut every 2 months. By the way, haircut £40-50. But you know, I live in Scotland. I'm happy. I, you know, left my corporate job since the last video was made, and now I am a self-employed maker, which, you know, comes with its issues, but also like it does make me happy, which, you know, at the end of the day, that's what matters. But if you do want to give me money, do it here. This is my Patreon page where you can get an extra video every month, or alternatively, maybe you want to buy some of my little Scottish souvenirs like these. There is a link in the doobly-doo for my Etsy store. You can also follow me over on Instagram under KakiBot and KakiBlog for my sort of slightly nerdy illustrations and ideas for merch and photos of my life and food here in Edinburgh. Okay, that is it for me. Hopefully this has been a helpful video concept for you. Don't forget to check out those older videos to just daydream about how if you moved here 3 years earlier, you could have had a nicer life. Don't wait, it's gonna get worse. Okay, and once again, thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video. It does make a difference. Okay, thank you for watching, and I shall see you soon. Bye.